So recording. And just so you all are familiar, ISTF is a student organization housed mostly or primarily through the College of Natural Resources, but we're looking to expand into multiple other colleges, including CALS, to basically enhance a more diverse perspective of tropical forests throughout the world and the different types of interdisciplinary elements, as well as communities that thrive through these areas and regions. Previously, we've done more of an international forestry perspective, but we're really looking to try to make our community a little bit more diverse in the sense of different disciplines and professions. Our usual activities are typically either around 2 to 4 chapter meetings a semester, where we usually have an annual social in April, which is a little bit longer than our typical meetings where we have multiple speakers and typically food as well. And when we don't have faculty sharing with us their different research or experiences, we usually invite students to be able to speak about their experiences, which gives an opportunity for our community to get to know each other, see how kind of wide and far the NC State community expands past the campus into the international community, as well as being able to stay connected to the international community, particularly when we're going through a little bit more of isolated time periods where we're not able to travel for research or as much for even pleasure. So this is a great way for us to have a conversation. So primarily this is very informal. We just kind of use this as a great opportunity to speak and learn from one another. And lastly, there's usually a conference at Yale each year. There was, I think the 26th one was this past year, the year before. Previously, it was converted to a virtual conference, but it's in February. So I don't think they've announced the news for that specific event on the theme nor date, but we can always keep you all informed through emails, which brings us to how you can participate. And our next meeting, we have one technically on the books right now, so we will keep you informed via the email list. So if you're not on our email list, please write your name and preferred name and email in the chat, and we'll add you to that. And along those lines, we are actively seeking new leadership, which I guess I didn't introduce myself. I think mostly everyone knows me in this, but I'm the former president or outgoing president, Stephanie Chismar. We have Meredith on the phone, Hovis, as well as Meredith Martin, our new faculty advisor, and Ian as well, who are as well as our outgoing leaders for our executive committee. And we typically always include our videos. We upload them to our YouTube page, and as well as we do post some things for Facebook and Twitter. You can see those below and stay up to date with what we're doing. And with that, I have a little bit of a, well, maybe not, here we go, a surprise. For those of you that are familiar with our program or with our community, I usually, or at least in the past, have always kind of included some kind of case study area or species for the tropics, so that way we can have all of those nice fuzzy species that are of so much joy to conservationists, but maybe get a little bit more attention than some of the other species that aren't so warm and fuzzy. But since I felt nostalgic because of our guest speaker today, I found a picture that was actually for the World Land Trust, and this is for a area in Belize called Jungle for Jaguars, different conservation area, and they have this really great picture of a puma checking out the camera. So I figured that would be nice to share today on this Friday. And with that, I want to hand it over to our speaker today, Dr. Roland Kays. I'm going to start. this.
Cool. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to come and talk to you guys. Certainly, tropical ecology has been a big part of my background. I did my PhD working in Panama and have been going back and forth there ever since. Worked with a number of folks at the Center for Tropical Forestry Studies there, and had the fortune of working in a variety of tropical places, mostly in the New World and some in Africa. I have some of you guys might know my student, Matt Snyder, who's a PhD student. He's in Zambia right now doing some work. So great to see the tropics represented here at NC State. What I'm going to be talking about today, we'll have some tropical examples, but it's not specifically about the tropics, but it's about mining wildlife big data for science and conservation, but also for stories. And the idea, right, the concern is that the world is changing fast. And to keep up with this, we need new data every year. We need timely analyses, and we need this for a variety of species and locations. And we know this from all kinds of remote sensing and kind of global databases about the temperature going up, the forest going down, the fires increasing, all these kinds of things, many of which are sensed from above. And the point is that we need this kind of information, right, every year, because the world is changing. We need to know how things are doing. And it's hard to get that with animals because you can't just see them from satellites. But there's a lot of new monitoring methods and improving monitoring methods that have really changed the game and are producing some fantastic data. And I'll show you this example. This is some tracking data following some storks. So it's real tracking data. And there's some storks in Germany that are juveniles and are leaving the nest and doing their amazing migration south. So they head over the Iberian Peninsula into Africa and do this perilous journey over the Sahara, some of them going through the Middle East, some of them going through Western Africa. And then as they go, they're landing, and of course they're interacting with other species like wildebeest in this example, some real tracking data from wildebeest in East Africa. The amazing thing about these storks is some of them keep going, I don't really know why, but all the way down to South Africa, where of course you're going to be interacting with different species like buffalo or elephant. And so this example shows you how much detail we can now get from this tracking data, how we can use it to look at how species interact and how some of these animals really connect the planet, right? These guys, they don't care about borders. They don't care about conflict. They're getting back up to their breeding ground now in the springtime for another season of breeding in Europe. And so this gives you an example of the type of information we can get from putting a tag on an animal. But also we have other options of putting a sensor out in the environment and getting records of animals as they walk by. I'll be focusing mostly on camera trapping, but we can also do this with acoustic sensors. And so it's kind of the flip side of the animal tracking, where in tracking, you get one animal and you see everywhere that animal goes, but you don't know what everyone else is doing. In this case, you get an example of what's going on at one place, but you don't really know where this bear is going to go next. And if another bear walks by, is it the same bear or a different bear? You don't necessarily know that, but you don't have to catch the animal. So that's also an advantage. So these kinds of data sets are allowing us, from the animal point of view, to put more and more dots on the map, right? These are all places that we've run camera traps in North Carolina, zooming out from the triangle area. And you can see even across the country where we've been collecting data, some ourselves, some with collaborators, to get a better idea of what's going on. The trick is with any of these is there's challenges with big data, right? How are we going to deal with all these pictures? Oh my God, I've got so many memory cards filling up with pictures. Some of them are blowing grass. Some of them are white-tailed deer and squirrels, 1,000 squirrels. How am I going to process all these? This is a real challenge. So I want to talk today about some of the promises of these kinds of big data and providing more details, leading to more discoveries, and potentially being, in real time, more timely. But then also some of the peril of big data, that it's hard to manage and it's hard to analyze, and it's hard to do it in a timely fashion. So when we talk about the sort of big data and the challenges in general, there's this framework, kind of the 4 V's. And so I'll show how these apply to wildlife data in specific. You have volume, you've got millions and billions, and then you also have variety, right? in addition to camera trapping and animal tracking, we have eBird, we have iNaturalist, we have remote sensing, we have museum data, and then we have ancillary data like weather, or sorry, I said already, remote sensing, to compare the habitat that the animals are moving through. Veracity, we have to verify, right? Are the species identified correctly? Did the citizen scientists identify correctly? Are they identified correctly on the pictures? And then even for the animal tracking, we sometimes have GPS error, where all of a sudden animal will be moving around and then it looks like he's like 30 miles away, and then all of a sudden he comes back, right? He didn't do that. That was a GPS error, but we have to deal with these kinds of things. And then velocity. We have, for many of these examples, we have live data, and we have the opportunity and sometimes the need for real-time analyses. So this is how I sort of see the challenges of big data when it comes to from a wildlife perspective. Now, the reason that we're excited about this is because, right, especially from a conservation point of view, we have this idea that we can have our wildlife, we can collect our data, analyze the data, make it useful to politicians and managers, and actually lead to conservation action. And so from this point of view, what I'm going to be talking about is how do we make this part more efficient and more approachable for politicians and managers. But then I'm going to end by pointing out that this isn't always how life works. And a lot of times public opinion and politics get in the way of managers necessarily following what the data says. And we've seen that in fields outside of wildlife biology this year more than ever. So I also want to talk a little bit about how can we use the wildlife and the stories from the data and the studying of the wildlife to connect, just generally engage with the public on some of these issues. So I'm going to talk first about camera trapping, then about animal tracking, and then we'll end with some animal stories. So talking about two different research projects really here on the animal tracking and the camera trapping side. That is a kinkajou there with a radio collar, by the way. That's a tropical mammal that I did my PhD on. It's related to the raccoon, but kind of lives more like a monkey. It's up in the trees, eats fruit, only walks around at night. I'll show you some data from them in a little bit. And we use this tool, we created this tool called MoveBank for managing animal tracking data. And we have a different tool with a totally different group of collaborators for camera trap called Wildlife Insights. And so, like I said, these are big teams of people. I'm just a member of both of the teams. And so I just want to make sure to acknowledge the animal tracking side. That's Mark McKelsey on the left. He and I started this working in Panama with tracking data. And then on the right, Wildlife Insights is a big collaboration between a number of different institutions. And so the motivation is, right, both of these are growing. These are a little bit out of date already, but you can see the rapid growth of animal tracking data and camera trapping data. And we're scaling this up, like I said, dots on the map. You can see that graph showing the number of papers published with camera trapping data really skyrocketing. And if you're not familiar with the camera trap, you can see one there strapped to the tree. And the idea is there's a motion sensor when a warm-blooded animal walks by. So it doesn't really work on snakes and lizards and turtles, but mammals and birds walk by, it triggers and it takes a series of pictures. And usually we use infrared flashes so that we don't freak the animals out and blind them with a white light. Like I said, we're on the Wildlife Insights on the camera trapping side. I just want to point out, we started, you might have heard of something called MAMMAL if you're in the camera trapping world. Bill McShay and I at the Smithsonian started MAMMAL, and we're now transitioning into and moving all those data into Wildlife Insights. And basically a number of organizations decided that none of us can afford to each have our own camera trapping database. So let's work together and have a community database that we all support. And so the basic idea, you can see those organizations on the right, Conservation International, Smithsonian, Wildlife Conservation Society, WWF, et cetera. And it's great, we have support from Google. So Google's helping us with the artificial intelligence and the cyber infrastructure. And so the idea is to have two big things. One, have artificial intelligence help to identify the species. If you whoops, look at this video, let me get this video playing again, you'll see the computer is automatically recognizing where the animal is, and I'm guessing what it is. So this is what we have to help speed the identification of the pictures on the way in. We still have humans looking at it, but the idea is to make it more efficient. And then automated analytics on the way out, right? So we don't you don't learn a whole lot from the pictures. I mean, sometimes you get a picture of like an invasive species or something and you're like, oh my God, there's an invasive species here. But normally it's the numbers, right? It's doing the analyses, running the models, comparing abundance, comparing occupancy, looking at what factor is involved. And those take a lot of time to do. So we want to try to automate some of those as well. And so I'll show you how that works with Wildlife Insights. The basic idea is we have these unprocessed pictures. So you take your memory card, you dump them into Wildlife Insights, the AI plugs and chugs, and it identifies and guesses what it thinks they are. And then there's the human, that's a human eyeball there, looking at the pictures and confirming or changing those identifications. And so once the pictures are processed, they go into the next round of training. And every 2 months, we train new AI models in Wildlife Insights, so they're getting better and better and better as we process. For example, right now, Matt's uploading a bunch of pictures from Zambia to Wildlife Insights, and there's an antelope there called the puku that the AI has never seen before. But so now we're fixing, it keeps calling them impala. They kind of look like impala. So we say, no, this is a puku. We keep doing that. In a couple months when they retrain it, hopefully it'll be better at recognizing puku. But then on the metadata side, the idea is this is where the analysis comes, right? So we can, within Wildlife Insights, you can select the data, you can build standard filters because there's always cleaning, there's always some work that needs to be done. This will be done inside Wildlife Insights, and then you'll be able to send them to a variety of analyses for different types of things. This is not presently functional, but we're programming it right now. Hopefully by the beginning of next year, it'll be live on the site. It's all spelled out and done. So this is just some examples of the types of things. Those are activity graphs that show what time of day an animal is active. Those are maps that show where they're found, relatively how common they are, how that changes over time. Some of these kinds of things we'll be able to do in an automated way. Some more of that. So the other point about this that I want to make that's really changing the way I do science is the way it enables massive amounts of collaboration. So let's say I want to do a study, I want to compare 4 places, and I've got some friends that are running camera traps in those 4 places. I could say, okay, hey, send me your data. They could all send me, a CSV file, and I could go through it and I could get it all together. It would be a pain. I've done this before. It is a pain. You got to change the taxonomy. You got to change the timestamps. Are sometimes wrong. Sometimes something else is wrong. It takes a long time, right? But you can do it. You can drill down and you can do this comparison of 4 sites. But if you want to do dozens or hundreds of sites, forget about it. No way I'm getting 100 CSV files from different people and cleaning all that. It'd be a disaster. So that's how this, having everybody use the same platform enables us to now start to have these massive collaborations. So we did this initially with MAMMAL, with citizen science across North Carolina. And you can see we had volunteers run cameras in all 100 counties across the state, sampled over 4,000 locations in 3 years. And just as a comparison, I looked at the last 10 papers published with camera traps. They used 99 sites. So we had 4,000 plus, more than 4,000 sites. So it's a really good sampling of the wildlife in the state. You can see here we got 106,000 animal detections, including almost 500 bobcats. And if you compare what else is available for North Carolina, well, if you look at iNaturalist or museum records for all time, there's about 15,000 museum specimens from North Carolina. And also, just to put it in perspective, for bobcats, there's 27 in iNaturalist, 28 in museums, and in 3 years we got almost 500. So in terms of the resolution that gives us for where do these species live in the state, what type of habitats do they like, where do we not get them, this is really good resolution. And again, kind of hopefully meeting the challenge of needing this new data every year or every couple of years on these species to see what's going on. But then my collaborator, Bill, at the Smithsonian, to him, our North Carolina project wasn't enough. He said, we need to go countrywide. And so we created this idea of Snapshot USA, this model where we want camera trappers all around the country. And I don't mean citizen scientists, because they don't have enough cameras. They have like 1 camera, right? We want scientists. Run your cameras in a standardized way, and let's all share the data. And let's try to get coverage across the entire state. And we had great response from this. In 2019, we had 127 participants from all 50 states. a lot of them doing it with undergraduate classes, having the undergrads run the cameras and help with the data, or some already had a project, right? They were already running their own cameras and we were able to have the protocols match up. This year is our 3rd year, so we're doing it right now. We do it every year so far in September and October. And so even last year during COVID, we were able to do it. And so we had about 1,400 cameras last year. It's underway right now. You can see there on the map where we had cameras run. I think that's 2019, and a couple example layouts there on the insets. So they're not giant arrays. Typically, there's sort of 10, 20, 30 camera locations, but it's enough to get a snapshot of what's going on in that location. They all come together, and then what we do is we publish the data every year with everyone as co-authors. Right now, I'm writing a paper with 150 co-authors, which is going to be a nightmare to submit, but that's the payoff. These people run their own cameras, they upload the data, they get the permits, and they put all the data, and they get a publication. And now anyone can use those data from 2019 and just cite the paper. And of course, we have other collaborations where we're actually analyzing the data and doing, asking questions with it, using the data. But just the emphasis here is just trying to get the data quickly, turn it around, make it publicly available, do it again, try to at a countrywide scale. So here's what it looks like. This was a week ago. We've got more already. People are starting to upload the data now into Wildlife Insights. And we even have it going in Europe now. So we talked to some collaborators and they really like the idea. They put a call out and, they already had this network. They already knew the people. The people already had their camera traps and they're like, yeah, I'll run cameras for a couple months and upload all the pictures. So really excited about that. It's really fun for me to see all these new species that I'm not as familiar with coming in from Europe. So that's cool. So that's the end of the camera trapping side. Maybe I'll just take a deep breath for a second and see if we can ask questions at the end too, but I'm going to move on to animal tracking. So just sort of see if anyone wants to ask any questions or comments about the camera trapping side. No. Okay. Well, let's move on. All right. Here's graduate student Roland in the field in Panama. And that's the data I collected on one particular animal. There's a kinkajou. I mentioned them before, probably the cutest mammal in the world. And so I had radio collars on. This is pre-GPS, right? And I would follow them around. You can see me with my antenna, my binoculars, my headlight, and I would see where they would go. And I record the locations, get their behavior, what they were eating, things like that. And that's what I got in about a year, 247 fixes. And I was pretty happy about that because that was a lot of work. I did this on more than one animal, but that's just an example for one animal. And from this, you can get an idea of some idea of how much they move, which is important for seed dispersal in these guys because they're eating a lot of fruit. Some idea of what their home range size is and how it overlaps. But there's not a lot of resolution in that. And that's over a year. So here's gray hair Roland out with the kinkajous again, fancier GPS collars this time. And this is the kind of resolution you can get. So this is the same guy's home range. On the left, I've got it plotted on a map of canopy height. So that's Barrow, Colorado Island in Panama. The yellow is high canopy. The purple is low canopy. And the black lines show where they go. And look at the resolution. This is about 2 months of data, about 50,000 fixes. And it's amazing how they're using corridors. This is continuous forest, right? I mean, some of it's higher, some of it's lower. But look at the consistency that they're using certain corridors. It's really cool. And if you look at that thing on the right, I'm going to make it move now because this is what we call a space-time cube. And it shows you can make the z-axis time and see sort of how that animal was using their home range over time. And in this case, the colors are showing behavior types. So moving quickly, being clustered, or doing something we call sort of area restricted search. So I just show this as an example of the kind of resolution. In this case, it's a data point every 4 minutes on the kinkajous all night long while they're trucking around. The kind of resolution you can get from this. So the result is that the whole field has moved into the era of big data with the GPS, right? So this is showing how many data points different studies had per animal over time. And you can see in kind of the around 2000, the late 90s is some of my kinkajous that were about 100, a couple hundred locations. And then as GPS kicked in and started getting really efficient, we moved up to having sometimes 1 million points per individual. Those different colored dots are just different technologies that have been used to track animals. The important thing is that the GPS has really changed the game. So we really have entered the golden age of animal tracking, where we're not just guessing where the animals were between points with low resolution points that we spend a ton of time and effort trying to get. We get really high resolution tracks. And so that creates, some of the challenge of big data, of how do we deal with 1 million data points per individual, and how do we share them, and how do we analyze them? So to address this, we created MoveBank, which is an animal tracking database that the community can use. And so it's a free resource supported by the Max Planck Institutes and a bunch of grants that we've gotten from NASA and National Science Foundation and National Geographic and other places. And so it's showing, in this case, the green dots is a study. Each green dot is a study. And the gray dots are studies too, but I don't have permission to see the gray dots. So one of the things we do is the scientists maintain complete control over their data, and they can make it available or not. They can share it with one person, they can share it with the public, they can publish it with the DOI and let anyone use it. So they remain complete control of that. That's very important. There's now over 3 billion animal locations in MoveBank, and we have live feeds that are bringing in about 3 million data points a day right now. So all these different birds and mammals out there that have a GPS connected to a cell phone or some other live data feed, sending in about 3 million data points a day. And like I said, data owners control access, but this also, hopefully is facilitating collaboration, where everyone gets the data in the same format, and you can contact people. And so the science article, No Room to Roam, the lead author, wrote to a bunch of people and said, hey, I want to do this comparison of how mammals move compared to human infrastructure. And you can be a co-author. And we're all like, yeah, great, use my data. So she got an amazing data set, did a really good job with that. So I'll show you a little bit about how it works. This is maybe a little bit more nitty gritty. So if you're not an animal tracker, you might not be interested in all this, but I'll just sort of show you, it's amazing how MoveBank has grown from initially just being an SQL database that we would, dump data into really a whole ecosystem of tools. And so I mentioned the live feeds. We have 6 different networks that we can do live feeds from. So satellites, the Icarus, which has a communication antenna on the International Space Station, sends data down. GSM phone networks and the new IoT networks like Sigfox or LoRa can all send data in. You can also just upload it manually. We have an app that you can record what tag you put on which animal and then synchronize it. On MoveBank, that's where you set the settings. You can do a manual download. You can publish your data with the DOI, make it publicly available. And then we have an API, which can then be accessed via R scripts. So there's R packages that you can pull data from MoveBank, so you don't need to go to the website and download it. You can get it automatically through R. And there's also an app called Animal Tracker that anyone can use. It's publicly available. There's lots of public data on there. You can see every day what a certain bird is doing. You can go find it and take a picture of it and send it back to the folks. What's really cool is you can also send out alerts. You can say, hey, my stork died somewhere in Spain. Can someone go find it? And people will go find it. We've had a dozen, in the last year, we've had 10 or 15 birds that have gone down. The GPS stops moving. We know where it is, but it's not moving. We put out an alert on Animal Tracker. Someone goes and finds it, finds the transmitter, sometimes finds a dead bird, sends the transmitter back to the researchers, which is great because they're about $2,000 each. Twice, they've actually saved a bird that was caught in some human infrastructure, and they were able to save it before it died. So that was pretty cool as well. So then we also have, on the analysis side, we have the ENVA data system. And this is connecting directly to remote sensing data. So if you want to get, for your animal, you want to know what was the NDVI at these locations, and what was the temperature, and what was the population level of humans. We can get that for you. So you can put in the request. We go out, we get the right tiles of NDVI, we get the right tiles of the weather reanalysis programs. We put it all back there. We interpolate across space and time for the location and the timestamp where your animals were, and then we give you that. We provide that information to you. So it's makes it a lot easier for animal trackers who might not be familiar with all these different remote sensing products that are out there. It helps them get access to it better. And then finally, what I'm going to talk about a little bit more here is the MoveApps platform. This is the newest development in MoveBank, and it's meant to be, it is a no-code analysis platform. So it runs R underneath or Python, but it allows you to do analyses without getting into the nitty-gritty of the code. And so, part of the challenges is in animal tracking, there's, I told you it's the golden age of animal tracking. There's so many data packages, so many analysis options out there. This paper in 2019, October 2019, just did a review of our packages. There were 58. We updated it. There's already 82. There's probably more than this by now. So it's growing really fast. It's hard to keep track of. And if you're like me, right, when I see the R code, I'm just kind of, whoops. Anyway, R code is challenging for me. I can do it, but I'm pretty limited. I like the point and click, and I like you to explain to me a little bit more what exactly needs to be, are the settings here, and help me connect up the data with the analysis. Anyone else feel like this? Am I the only one? You guys are young students. You're good at this kind of stuff. So that's the idea. I think I said this right. Yeah, I already said this. So also, so we're developing some of these workflows, which I'll show you in a second, but we also want this to be a community product where if you have a nice R script, you put it into MoveApps. Or if you just like to code, you put it into MoveApps. You can create a workflow and again, save it, publish it with the DOI, then it becomes an academic product. Other people who use it will cite your workflow to give you credit for it. So we're trying to work this into kind of the academic environment so people can, so it's a community thing and not just us programming everything. But so this is an example of how it works. MoveApps is a series of apps that are connected into a workflow. So here's an app. This is a relatively simple bit of code. In this case, we're going to segment data by speed. That means you can see there, you can insert the speed. So we're going to do 4 meters per second. And anything that's above the threshold of 4 meters per second, we're going to keep. Anything that's below that, we're going to get rid of, right? So this is a useful workflow if you're looking at something like migration. If an animal is moving quickly, you want those data to plot migration. If it's just, knocking around, feeding for a few months, that's not migration. You're less interested in that. So this would be, a few lines of code, and you can do this and change it however you want. And then this is put into a workflow, and so you can see the segment data. The first app is always get data from MoveBank, and then, for example, this one you might remove outliers, thin data by time, segment the data by speed, and then that last thing plots a raster from your lines, creates a raster to see where's the hotspot. So, for example, here's a bunch of golden eagle data from migrating from Alaska into the Western United States that's in MoveBank. Here's what the individual tracks look like at first when you just do that. But when you segment them to migration and then to create a density, you can see where the real hotspot of migratory connectivity is for this species in those dark red pixels. And if you say, oh, well, can I have, that's pretty low resolution, you can just go back, change the setting on the app, run it again, and you can get, you can change the settings and get, something that's a little bit higher resolution if that's what you need. So that's an example of one workflow and how we use it. This is just, I'm not going to, you guys aren't necessarily using animal tracking data, but this is just an example. These are the kinds of things that we have now programmed in. So some behavioral analysis, some ability to export the results out into a shapefile, et cetera, et cetera. And you can also run these in real scheduled. So you can schedule them to run every day and then send you an email with the results. For example, if you want to see the live data, there's this thing called morning report. And that's the idea. It's like every morning you're going to want to wake up and check, have your cup of coffee and see where your animals are. And so that's what that does. It makes a map, it shows you graphs, how their batteries are doing, things like that. And so we're adding more. This is where what we'll be adding more to. Okay, so I'll kind of wrap up this part now and just point out that there's potential pitfalls and for wildlife big data. And we're address this through MoveBank, which gives you animal tracking data management. Move Apps platform for no-code analyses to try to make it easier to get insights from tracking data for conservation. And then likewise for wildlife insights, camera trap data management, artificial intelligence to help get the data in, our automated analytics to help get insight out of that information. And this is an example that really enables large-scale collaboration. But sometimes the data don't always win the day, right? This cartoon says, "I'm sorry, Jeannie, your answer was correct, but Kevin shouted his incorrect answer over yours, so he gets the points." And for sure, if you're paying attention to the last 2 years, we've seen a lot of facts that get shouted over or ignored. And so part of, I think, okay, so we get all these nice facts and these nice data maps about animals. But I think we also need to engage people with this subject matter. Some people don't like data. Some people, facts, they don't get excited about facts, right? But a lot of people get excited about stories. And humans are programmed to process information from stories. And so something that I've kind of been thinking about is how can we take these amazing stories that we're studying, right? These animals, each animal that we track, we get an insight into their life that's very unique. And animal trackers really do that more than anyone else because we follow individual animals, right? I know all my kinkajous from my PhD in Panama, Pokey and Elvis and Molly and Griselda, they're all characters. I know all their story. I know parts of their stories, right? And so the idea is, well, let's share those. So I created a podcast called the Wild Animals Podcast, where I interview animal trackers and they tell their stories. And so you can see, here's some of the characters from the first 2 seasons. Pluie, the wolf who inspired carnivore recovery across the West. Pac-Man, the jaguar with 2 girlfriends in 2 different countries. Hansi, the stork who brought a baby to a farm. These are all really fun stories told by animal trackers. And I'm working on season 3 right now. It's been a little slow this last year. I need to get a couple more. I need to get like 2 or 3 more stories recorded. We'll record that, but check it out. It's available anywhere you get your podcast. Okay, here's season 3. Waffles, the hyena who climbed the social ladder, was a really good one. And WDF 128. Some people don't give their animals very good names. WDF 128 was literally the last wild dog in a distemper epidemic in East Africa, where all the other dogs died. She survived. Magically, a new male showed up out of nowhere and they had a new litter and now they're repopulating the area. It's really a cool story. So I need to get this season out. This isn't out yet, but it will be soon. So I'll just end by one of the things I'm thinking about is maybe on the camera trap, using the camera trap stuff to tell stories and to sort of take the same idea, the same general concept into a YouTube channel. And so I prototyped a little bit from some work I did on porcupine. So maybe we'll just watch this for a couple minutes and then I can take some questions.
One of the most epic predator-prey battles ever is between
you can hear
porcupine,
that, right?
one of the best defended mammals out there, and its arch nemesis, the fisher, the only animal fierce enough and crazy enough to regularly attack porcupines. And this interaction happens in the northern forest, where it has real ecological implications.
Oh my God, look at that. That's just like so trimmed. Like it should be a big full green canopy, and there's just little bits left because the porcupine has eaten it all. And if you look down the ground, you can see the parts that they've dropped while eating it. So this is the damage that they can do to a tree, and why you need to have predators like fishers around to keep the porcupine populations in check.
And here you can see the trail leading from the den to the feeding tree. In this case, we're going to the den, and this is a ground den. And this particular place was really amazing because it was really had lots and lots of holes in the ground. And if you go down in there, you can see long tunnels under there. So lots of good porcupine habitat here.
So this is the place that we think the fishers need to catch the porcupines when they're on the ground, moving between a sleeping site and a feeding site. And in fact, there's a fisher trail in the snow coming right through here. So we know fishers are using the spot, porcupines are using the spot. So we got a camera trap there, we got a camera trap there, we got a camera trap there. We're gonna try to see if we can catch an interaction between this predator and prey.
Okay, so let's meet the porcupines. This guy's coming out of a cave den. And here you can see one with its spines up. So they can kind of raise or lower them depending on how alert they are. They're pretty funny looking dudes. I really enjoyed some of these close-up shots we got. This guy in particular, they kind of look like gremlins to me. This is like some kind of snow gremlin.
All right, you get the idea. It's an 8-minute video. I won't play the whole thing, but you can, if I end up getting this together, you can tune into